Hi, welcome again to Me, My CTO and I, brought to you by CTO Academy. This is how do I describe it? It's an exploration and a celebration of the CTO role, sponsored by our wonderful friends at RP Analytics for all your data and analytics professional. They are, I'm told, creating the largest data network in the UK, Europe, and probably the rest of the world. So get hold of Liam and his team. And actually now is a good time to get hold of Liam because his team, Leicester City, have just been promoted, which is a nice segue.
We have.
A nice segue to my great friend and co-host, Sanjay Mistry. How are you, Sanjay?
Very good. I'm very good. Summer's here. Leicester did get promoted, but then lost our manager pretty quickly, right? So I don't know if it's bittersweet, but yeah, it's all good.
You're back in the big time. That's the most important element, isn't it, of what's happened. So Sanjay, here's the thing, right? I want to just see how this affects you. I'm not much of a Netflix binger, but I ended up watching all 3 episodes of a program recently about Ashley Madison. Now, are you familiar with Ashley Madison? Probably not.
Bit, yeah.
I hope not, because it's basically a dating service for married people. So it's a slightly infamous website and the story is that they going gangbusters in terms of growth. I think early to 2010s. I think they went up to 37 million users. Everything is absolutely flying all over the place. Amazing success, but they're a little bit laissez-faire with their security, and they got hacked. They got hacked by an organization called the Impact Team, who basically downloaded about 60 gigabytes of very, very sensitive material, because the people on this platform were, they sold discretion because it was all about having affairs, basically. So the people on the platform did not want this material to be out. So it's quite an interesting program on Netflix for anybody who's interested in it. And of course, Ticketmaster have just recently suffered. I think their hackers. I always quite like the hackers' names. That their hackers are called Shiny Hunters. It's quite a nice hacker's name. But half a billion users been hacked there, and I suspect my details are out there somewhere because I've used Ticketmaster, as have most of us. So, I mean, what's been your experience, Sanjay? Have you ever suffered a major attack, and does it kind of prey on your mind all the time operationally?
It does. I'll be honest, it does prey on your mind, right? So yes, I have been hacked many years ago, thankfully. And it wasn't major. So we got compromised. We caught it pretty quickly. So we caught it same day and we shut it down same day. But it does play on your mind of a CTO or any technology leader, right? And I think I know I try to do everything I can to protect against it, right? So regular pen tests, we do quite a lot of security training for the team. So not just the developers, but the wider business. And then what I've seen of a lot recently over the last 4 or 5 years is just social engineering hacking. And again, we nearly got caught. There was, one of our partners got hacked. Their emails got hacked. They sent an invoice with different bank details.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And because our finance team had this training, they started asking the right questions. Hey, why are you changing your bank details? You're meant to fill out a specific form. Why is it coming in on the invoice? So they started asking the right questions. And then when we dug into it, we realized this invoice had been photoshopped. And the email had been compromised. So it's a great catch, but I think that, training across the business is so important. But yeah, not constantly worried about it, but it's always a thread in the back of your mind. Right?
Yeah, but there's a great example. If anybody takes anything away from that little use case, is company-wide training. It's not just about your developers, is it? It's about everybody being aware of where the threat can be used against you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, listen, we've got an interesting chat as always. Your fireside chats are never less than interesting, Sanjay. Giles, is it Business Agile that you're talking about?
Yeah, business agility. Yeah, it's a great conversation. I think everyone's going to love this one.
Awesome. Okay. Well, of course, as everybody knows, before that, we have our most wonderful, most popular Tech Leaders quiz.
You really, really need to get out more.
So yes, here we are again. It is the world's most popular, first, successful, this is what my PR company are telling me to say, Tech Leader quiz hosted by CTO Academy, where we offer $50 to the winners of this quiz to get out more, get away from the keyboard and go and enjoy on CTO Academy's behalf a meal at a local nominated restaurant. And we're always thrilled with the people who volunteer to do this. So thank you both very much indeed. Corey Latislaw and Casey McCurdy, welcome to the quiz. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Andrew. Sanjay.
Good to see you guys. Corey, I'm going to do our normal intro here. We have 2 or 3 minutes of a little bit of background to each of our guests. Corey, tell us a bit more about you, what you're up to, what you're looking to do. And I've got a visual I'm going to add at the end of all this of something I know you've done for us and which I love. But Corey, tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm going on about 2 decades of tech career now, about 12 years of leadership in there. And I've worked across a broad range of different industries, technologies. I've worked in both product companies and consulting companies. And I've always really focused on modern developmental practices and Agile and but the best practices out in the industry and always pushing those. Started as a software dev back in the day, and now I've grown up into a strategic business leader. And I think a lot of people do tend to struggle with that transition, but that's what CTO Academy is all about. So I also do a lot of conference speaking. I've been doing that for about 15 years or so. I also really like to organize stuff. So I used to organize the Android meetup, for example, in Philadelphia. Hobby artist and professional sketchnoter. You'll show some of that later. And then personally, I love like learning, reading, and biking, all about nature. As far as the things that I'm dealing with and thinking about right now, so most recently I was at a consulting firm as director of engineering, and did lots of stuff, but 2 of the really interesting bits are last year I started a Gen AI, lab. We had several business problems to solve, including difficulty in selling in a very tough market and a large bench of engineers. So I used that, plus the partner technologies with Google and Microsoft to build out both blueprints and playgrounds to win new work, deepen partnerships. And it was a really interesting couple of months. We did about 50 projects and won over $1 million in work. So it was quite successful, and I really enjoyed doing that. And then another strand throughout the years is strategic restructuring and M&A, which sounds boring on the surface, but if you think about it, it's more like architecting the organization for success. So a lot of things from programming, I tend to like think about it and apply it into my new stuff. So that's the architecture there. And then currently I am studying to be an executive coach. So finishing up that course soon.
How, your 2 projects that you've explained are really interesting. So talking about Gen I and restructuring, I mean, they're completely different, in terms of brain space. How did you find the flip flop between the 2?
Yeah, it is definitely a bit of a context switch, but I tend to be quite intentional in how I organize things, and I'll have whatever themes I'm focusing on and make sure that I advance those every week. So I'm quite simplistic in the way I like to spend some time on one thing instead of thrashing between the 2. So I'll try to spend a day or 2 on one and a day or 2 on another to advance them. But with the Gen AI thing, I was also building up a leader. So I was helping him build out his strategic muscles and run the organization. So I didn't have to do every single project, every single architecture. But I was involved pretty deeply in a lot of them. But yeah.
Very cool. I like it. I like the way you think of organizational structures as being architecting code and the synergies, because it's exactly how I do it as well. So it's interesting.
Thanks, Sanjay. I mean, people listening to this podcast are not going to get the benefit of this next mini section, but Corey briefly mentioned that she does professional sketch notes and as an illustrator. So on screen now, producer James has put one of those sketches up. Corey, I mean, they're fantastic. I mean, for those who are able to watch, this is a sketch that Corey did for a Gen AI session we did very recently here at CTO Academy, and it's brilliant. Very, very briefly, where has this all come from? What was the beginning of this journey for you?
Yeah, so back in 2015, a friend of mine at a conference was sketchnoting. I was like, what are you doing? That looks fun. So I just started doing it as well. And then I went and read a bunch of books about it. And then I got really interested in both sketchnoting, but then also getting better at drawing. And that led to a huge explosion in art in general. I actually just gave a talk at DevOps UK recently about how to create a creative practice to help you become a better leader and technologist. So if you want to learn more about that, it's got the whole journey in there as well.
Awesome. Well, we're going to put a link as well to your website in the notes that support this podcast. So again, if you are listening to it, jump onto YouTube and you'll see how fantastic those sketches are. Corey, thank you. There's a couple of things that link our guests today. They're both Americans. Corey is from Florida originally, but now living in London. Casey, who's going to join shortly, in Colorado. But also, Corey, you're obviously got a backdrop there of a very London backdrop, beautiful spring day. And Casey, who I'm going to introduce and come and say hello, has got Winston Churchill in the background. So hurrah for that. Casey, come and tell us about yourself.
Hey, I'm Casey McCurdy, living just south of Boulder, Colorado right now. And I've got about 20 to 25 years experience in the industry, however you want to define it. And, the entire time I got to a point where I've tried to work my way down the corporate ladder as fast as I could. I got up to the top on some executive levels and I'm like, man, I miss coding. So Corey, what you said about that struggle, it's really, really real. So I have a background in design. I went to school and got a commercial art degree, which means I appreciate art, but I also want to make money. And so that was, around the year 2000. So right when web designers meant that you did everything for a website or technology. And so by the way of many startups, agencies, et cetera, I kind of ended up having to learn it all and taught myself to code along the way. And it's been a really fun journey. So right now I am head of engineering at a company called Gloo. That's GLOO, because all the good company names are taken and that's how we have to spell things now. And what we basically are is a communications platform for the faith and recovery ecosystem. So if you think about this, we're like a CRM. We provide tools to help people help people. So if you're on a spiritual, mental health, or addiction recovery journey, we provide the tools for people to be able to connect to people that can help them. And last year we helped over 600,000 people actually get connected with another human being that wants to kind of shepherd their journey and help them grow on whatever journey they're on. So for me, it's there are challenges in that. You do have the challenges of kind of quasi startup life. We are about a 150 person company. It kind of ebbs and flows, but we also have to handle extremely sensitive data. And so we have to do very big company things with a small company, and that comes with its own challenges for sure. But what I love is that I'm writing software every day that makes a difference in people's lives. We hear of lives that are changed literally every day by the stuff that we're doing, and that feels really good. And for me, my mom was a nurse. My dad was a police officer. So I grew up with this need to try to serve people and do that. So in many kind of soulless tech jobs that I've had in the past where they've been fun, but you're like, am I making a difference? It really starts to feel good to do that. And just recently I've started writing a whole lot, publishing a weekly and just trying to figure out what my kind of shtick is, what the thing I'm going after. And I came to it last week that I'm really trying to write to help people that are stuck. I think all of us are stuck in different parts of life. And so I'm hoping to be just kind of that little, nudge that you need to get off kilter. So I've been enjoying that and looking forward to continuing to grow that.
Very, very cool, Casey. You mentioned earlier that, so before we started recording, that you start your day very early. Is that how you cram in everything that you're talking about? How do you organize your time to get that all in?
Yeah. This is an upcoming post that I'll write about, but it's what I've learned is the world is very good at taking your money, and that's why we have budgets, right? And you pay your mortgage and you do the stuff that you have to do every day first, and then all the other stuff kind of fills in the cracks. It's those big rocks, small rocks type of a concept. So for me, I'm nothing if I don't have my physical health. Because that directly impacts my mental health. So for me, yeah, it's not fun getting up at 4:30 every day, but my wife and I somehow have found a way to do it. And once that's out of the way, I find that it really does help me fill in those cracks with all of those other things that I really enjoy doing. Occasionally playing these guitars behind me, not nearly as much as I'd like to, but that really is kind of a life hack, is put the most important stuff first in your day, because the world, like I said, is really good at taking your money. It's even better at taking your time. And you can't get that back. I can always get more money.
I really like that. It's great advice. Yeah.
Yes, brilliant.
Good
Brilliant. Well, both of you driven by a lot of intrinsic motivation there as well in terms of what you're doing and what you're aiming to do. So listen, great to see you both. Nominated restaurants. Corey, if you were lucky enough to win the $50 for the end of this quiz, where would you be spending that money?
So there's a restaurant called Carousel here that has a rotating set of chefs that come in from all over the world. That's where one of my first dates with my husband was at, and that's where we had our reception for our wedding as well. So,
awesome! I love that. That'd be great. And Casey, how about yourself?
A few years ago here where I live in Colorado, we had some really bad wildfires and we lost about 1,500 homes in our community. And there was one place that was severely affected, and it is the best barbecue in the world. And it's a place called Wayne's Barbecue in Superior, Colorado. I'm giving them my $50 all day long.
Great stuff. I love it. Okay, let's get on to the action, to the meat of all of this. Very low tech. I'm always I'm the non-techie in the room, as you all know. So I rather like delivering a low tech quiz. 3 questions. If you know the answer, please call out your name, and then obviously to get it right, we move on. If you don't, it goes to your opponent. Corey, I'm going to allow you to select the first of the 3. The 3 categories that we have today: who am I, name that company, or acronym unraveled.
How about who am I?
Who am I? Perfect. I think this is relatively easy, right? But, I always think that mostly. So here we go. Good luck, guys. Born 68 years ago in Seattle. Next year, he's releasing a memoir that's going to be called Source Code. This Harvard dropout.
Bill Gates. Casey. Bill Gates?
Got it. It is. Well done, Casey. Yeah, well done. Formed the company with his childhood friend, Paul.
He's 68? Wow, 68.
I think he's coming up 69, actually. Yeah, he is indeed. So, 1-0 to Colorado. Casey, name that company or acronym unraveled.
Ooh, let's do name that company.
All right, here we go. A former Cisco engineer called Eric Yorn, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, founded this speedy meeting company in 2011, which had...
Corey, Zoom.
It is. Great. I love it. I'm so happy when it's 1-1. So pleased with that. Brings a little competitive tension. Yeah, it brings a little competitive tension. All right. Final one. What does the acronym URL stand for?
Casey, Uniform Resource Locator.
Got it. Well done. Well done, Casey. Thank you both. Thank you both very much.
Corey.
I think you need buzzers. You need buzzers.
I know. We need something.
I know. I do apologize. But Wayne's Barbecue Restaurant is going to be the beneficiary of the $50. Corey, thank you so much. Casey, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, I tell you, Sanjay, I get very excited when they get all 3 questions right. Because
it's good, right?
I know it's difficult sometimes because, when you're in it, it's like rabbit in the headlight. But brilliant. Good effort from Casey and Corey. And I hope that Casey enjoys the $50 from
I got two this time round. I got 2.
Can I tell the audience, when we come off, he always tells me he's got all 3 right. But, I'm never quite believing. All right. We're going to move on to Sanjay's Fireside Chat.
Hi, Giles. Thanks for joining me on today's Fireside Chat. So really appreciate you joining. So for the audience, you are releasing a book, or you've just released a book called Clearly Agile, and can't wait to read it. So that'll be good. So just for the audience, it's an April 2024 release on Amazon and other resellers. And I guess that the book leads on to the conversation that we're going to be having. So the book, we're going to be having a conversation around business agility and technology agility and how, that works hand in hand. So I'm going to, like always, I'm just going to dive straight into it and start asking you questions. So, in your own words, how would you define business agility and therefore define technology agility?
I think it's this approach, this mindset to running an organization in a different way from the sort of the standard norms of bureaucracy, command and control, micromanagement today? I mean, it's a great question. And I mean, if we had, a couple of hours, I would really sort of drill into, what does business agility actually mean? And one thing is that while it sort of may be born from a similar approach and a similar mindset from the world of Agile. And, I'm an Agile coach and instructor as well as a chief technology officer. The issue here is it's more about bringing that adaptive mindset across all parts of the organization such that we can then actually foster growth, deliver more value, delight customers at the end of the day in a way that organizational design, should I say, doesn't really operate in today in many other organizations. So it's about bringing a kind of a paradigm shift to ways of working in a business to remove the centrality of command and control management, to remove silo mentality as well across the organization. You want all parts of your business working hand in hand to deliver outcomes for your customers, to make money for the business, rather than simply just that department doing that over there in its own way, this department over here doing its thing in its own way. And as such, it's, as it name in the title, business agility, the agility of the business to do things smarter rather than harder. So, a really 300,000 foot elevator view of this world. This is what, business agility is all about.
And I think we lose sight of that quite quickly, right? So I think it's a really interesting subject for everyone to keep top of mind. I think where I'd like to go next is, as CTOs, as technology leaders, we are used to Agile in the world of, product development, yes, right? Yep. And when we have our lens down, looking at whatever we're building as tech people, we get it, and we get Agile, and we get Scrum, and the rest of the flavors that are out there. How do I take that knowledge? Because I think that knowledge is already learned, right? So we already have a skill set around agility. How do we take that knowledge and flip it to, the leadership role of what we do, right? So how do we take that and start working with our peers? So, the rest of the people in the leadership room, how do we work across different functions? So outside of technology or development or IT or whatever my department may be called, and work with other functions within the business. And then I think the two really important ones is, how do I work with my clients and how do I work with my customers with that kind of, agile mindset? So how do I flip that?
Yeah. I mean, brilliant question. You've got to remember that, these ways of working, have been around for just over 20 years since the creation of the manifesto back in 2001, this movement, which was all about software development and organizations wanting better ways of working to deliver working software at the end of the day. Okay. Now, yes, before the manifesto, there was still things like Scrum coming out in October 1995. Pre that, there was DSDM and XP. So, you would actually say that agility in modern technology organizations has probably been around for 30 years plus these days, right? Now, kind of going back to, what that definition of business agility is, for me, it talks about, or referring to an organizational capability, right? Or the organization's capability, I should say, to adapt swiftly and efficiently to things like changing market conditions, customer preferences, technological advancements, changes in the workforce as well. So, what it's trying to talk about are things like new needs in the organizations, like flexibility, adaptability, responsiveness in decision making, operations, management, right? And it's this idea that if you introduce this agility across the organizational design, you will foster a culture of continuous learning, continuous improvement, enabling the business to sort of navigate uncertainties and paths that they've never navigated before in the hope of staying ahead of the competition. Now, to do that, you need really strong leadership. And 20 years ago, when the manifesto was created, I became a Scrum Master 2004. And the point was, I remember sort of walking out of passing the qualification. I'm a master. I'm an absolute legend. No, you're not. I'm an absolute beginner. I am somebody who is right at the start of this journey, right? And yet, can you imagine the friction that CEOs and CIOs and CFOs would have endured 20 years ago, especially with a person like me running around the business as a Scrum Master going, we've got to change everything. We've got to change all our ways of working. We've got to do things differently now. I'm not even an engineering manager or head of engineering, let alone someone who's in the exco capability. So here I am running around trying to tell everybody we've got to change. And that's just creating friction left, right, and center throughout an organization, right? And too many times we've seen Agile thrown out for the wrong reasons most of the times, but actually for the right reasons in organizations as well. It's taken 20 plus years for people like myself who were Scrum Masters 20 years ago to now become the CTOs and the CIOs of today. So I've taken that agility track and that sort of engineering leadership track hand in hand together all the way through my career to ultimately be able to have that seat at the top table through experience, and of the years of the service of doing the job in lots of different organizations, seeing what works well, what doesn't, to then have that conversation with my peers at the executive team level and start influencing this business agility mindset to all of my peers left and right. Change, this level of organizational change, this organizational capability to adapt swiftly and efficiently to these changing market conditions, customer preferences, et cetera, has to come from the top with the support of the CEOs, the leadership team, right? And as such, if they are not on board with this, you are going to have chaos because you will end up actually creating the opposite of what you are aspiring to achieve, which is you will create silos. You will have one part of an organization which is trying to embrace this agility. You'll have another part of the organization that is trying to do things in sort of traditional old ways of bureaucracy, micromanagement, command and control. And you'll end up with this clash. And that clash just damages an organization rather than actually sort of embracing it and supporting it and hugging it and allowing it to grow and do amazing things. So taking the leadership on this journey, which is ultimately why I wrote the book after sort of 10 years of experiences with great leaders and bad leaders and the learnings in between of taking them both on these agile journeys and the ones who have succeeded and the ones who have failed without mentioning them by name is what the kind of the book is all about, and the learnings and the takeaways and what good looks like to somebody like me, and what's worked well in organizational efficiency and what hasn't. So it's about making sure the leadership's on board. It's about people like me, and there's many of us now who have been in this agile world for over 20 years who are now senior leaders in organizations. It's our responsibility to influence our peers left and right, CEOs, CFOs, CDOs, CSOs, whatever your choice of title is, and to make sure that you're bringing them on the journey, that they are also supporting it, that they are also saying, yes, this is the right approach for us going forward in organizational design, ways of working. And that is why, as I said, ultimately I wrote the book. I can't be there and do this with all the CEOs in London or Europe or the world. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to write a book about it and my experiences and share it and go from there.
Nice. So you there's two big takeaways from that I just want to dig into a little bit. And one is, you're clearly saying it's really important to be top down. So, for example, Agile was bottom up, that the way I experienced Agile was always kind of bottom up. The team embraced it, right? And then it spread into other teams and it spread in throughout the department and so on and so on. But you're saying for business agility, which ultimately drives technology and product agility as well, is it's got to be top down. And I want to get into that with you, but also you used a word quite often, and I want to get into that as well, which is you've got to get the right organizational design. So what do you mean by top down, and what do you mean by getting the organizational design right?
Really good question. Let me take you back a few years to what I used to class in conversations, conferences and meetups and other things as the best agile transformation I'd been on, but also now what I also class as the worst agile transformation. It's the best and worst at the same time, right? And in doing so, hopefully it'll paint a bit of this picture. So, I arrived in an underperforming technology organization, a team of circa 100 people. They were literally 100 one-person teams, delivered 12 product releases in a 12-month period prior to my arrival. We ultimately set a KPI. We didn't want to quite triple it to begin with. We said, let's go to 36 minus 1, just so that we've got a bit of bandwidth there in case, we actually make 36, and introduce this new way of working, this new capability across the whole of technology and operations, introduce DevOps culture as part of the ways of working in the business as well. End of the first year, 109 product releases. We hit 36 within 4.5 months or something, So the insanity of, you could see this organization just absolutely openly embracing this new way of working and kind of going, we're tuning it to fit the need of the context of our organization. This is absolutely brilliant. We've needed this for such a long time. Second year, we went on and did 260 releases, right? And we were starting to get to a world of one-click deployments and other things as part of that process. So daily releases, as well as obviously weekly, monthly releases, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all great. However, what it actually created, because it was this idea of this ceiling came about. Now, when I was a Scrum Master 20 odd years ago, I had a ceiling to go upwards of my engineering manager, and he would stop the sort of this agile rollout across anything else other than the little world that I was responsible for. When I was an engineering manager, I hit a ceiling of the head of engineering, right? He wouldn't allow it to be pervasive upwards anywhere else in the organization. When I was head of engineering, you can see where this is going. I had a VP of engineering, right? And he wouldn't let it go any wider. When I was VP, I had a CIO or a CTO. He or she wouldn't let me go up any higher. And this was the problem in this organization. We had done a fantastic job, but I couldn't permeate upwards and outwards through other parts of the organizations. The organization had general resistance to change. They didn't want to change from their sort of levels of command and control and telling people what to do on a daily basis. There was this perception that actually Agile in the technology teams was making other teams, look bad, because they weren't able to do things at the same pace and the same cadence as their delivery teams. And sort of traditional parts of an organization might do things quarterly or half yearly or even yearly rather than in a 2-week iteration. Okay. So at the end of the day, there was real friction between the ways of working in technology and the rest of the organization. So while it was an absolute privilege to take this team on a journey going from 12 product releases to over 200 2 years later, and the difference it made to people's lives and hearing that they enjoyed coming to work on a Monday, attrition went out the window. We didn't have attrition in that technology team for 24 months because everybody was embracing the new ways of working. Attrition prior to my arrival had been something like 1 or 2 people every single month because people didn't feel invested in, didn't feel loved, didn't feel cared for, part of an organization, etc., etc. Now, 2 years later, we get the first person to leave after 24 months, which is just insane. But it created this friction with the rest of the organization. And eventually the CEO got rid of my boss, the chief product officer, me, the agile process and ways of working, took it back to the standard ways of working. The following year, 16 product releases, literally demolished it all and I say now it's the worst agile transformation at the same time because I couldn't permeate and bring exactly the same change mindset, growth mindset that everybody else had in technology and product through to the rest of the other parts of the organization. And as I say, I think to make an organization succeed in organizational agility, you've got to be seen to be leading from the top. Today, I don't have a ceiling any longer. Doing a role as a CTO or a CIO, I now get to take it from the top down while there's still agile coaches and scrum masters coming from the bottom up as well. And we kind of sort of somewhere meet in the middle. But I'm bringing my peers on this journey such that they can take the same growth mindset to their capabilities and their functions. And my coaches today won't just work with the technology teams. They'll work with marketing. They'll work with finance. They'll work with legal. They'll look for ways to sort of introduce flexibility and adaptability in their ways of working and their processes to try and make it slicker and easier for the entire organization to go in that same direction together, rather than a bureaucratic process in the finance world, which just somehow anchors everything back and slows it all down. So it has to be led from the top down, and we have to sort of get through. And I understand and spoken to so many people over the years where they sort of hit this fake ceiling, if you like, this invisible ceiling where they can no longer get through or break through. And that's it. It will only fit in this world within the organization, and the rest will never benefit from that capability, that way of working. When once proven, it shows actually how great it is for an organization to work in the same way.
And I think it sounds like the reason for the top-down approach with this, business agility is you and your fellow leadership team are there to remove the barriers, remove the wall around the different teams. And it sounds, and then allowing your scrum masters or engineering managers to work with their counterparts, because actually you've removed that barrier. You've kind of said, well, no, you don't need to go up and down. And so yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Totally. One thing to add to this is that, 20, 30 years ago, when I started my career, I had really bad managers. I still had some really bad managers in the last 20 years, but I had some really bad managers, 20, 30 years ago. And, they were command and control. Right. That's going to take you 2 weeks to do. Hang on a second. I haven't even sized this thing yet. I don't know. It would have been a waterfall or a JFDI or a V model way of working. And I would have absolutely no idea. And I'd probably be thinking that's 100 days of effort from me before it even hits a tester. And yet, you're telling me I've got 2 weeks or 4 weeks in which to do this. This is utterly insane, right? The pressure I would have been under to work evenings and weekends just to get the work done, completely psychologically dangerous, psychologically unsafe. And yet somehow we all did it because we needed a job, and the threat of losing your job for saying no was too great, right? So, it's now our responsibility and in our gift, the people who were those early adopters 20 years ago, who are now leaders today, to make sure organizations are embracing this. We want it to be part of organizational DNA. In fact, we want it so much to be part of organizational DNA, we don't want it to become part of the conversation. 20 years ago, you might have sort of said, oh, the company I'm going to work for has got internet access. That's amazing, right? It might even have broadband, not dial-up. But today, there's an expectation, isn't there? When you go and work in an organization, they are going to have Office 365, Google G Suite. They're going to have all the capabilities, networks, secure networks, DMZs, everything that you need to do your job. We want the same with these ways of working. We just want it to be expected such that in 10 or 20 years' time, the future CEOs and CTOs and CIOs are inherently working and operating this way. And actually, in fact, they're not having to think about it or make it part of the conversation. It just is. And it's because of the work that we are doing now to enable that in 10, 20 years time. You know, this idea that you talk to a CEO in 20 years time and they go, yeah, we heard of this thing called bureaucracy and command and control and micromanagement. You know, we never experienced this because, you know, we started work in the, 2010s and the 2020s, and we're now the leaders today. We heard this was something that happened in the late 20th century. Exactly. That's what we kind of want out of this. It's got to become pervasive enough that it is really entrenched in organizational DNA.
Yeah, I like that. I like that way of thinking. I think that's a really good way to put it. So okay. To drive this way of working top down, remove barriers, everyone's moving in the right direction. What would be the tools, the frameworks that I need to know about, our listeners need to go and research, people should be using as they go on this journey, right? What's going to help them?
I think there's going to be a lot of people like me out there who are the leaders of today and tomorrow for a while, at least, until obviously, we are retired and then it's the next generation. A lot of us will have created our own approaches to get an organization to adopt business agility. There are numbers of organizations out there today who have frameworks for business agility. And yet, I got to say, I would support every single one of them because they're all talking about the same sort of adoption strategies and adoption processes to actually introduce this mindset, to introduce this DNA into the organization's design. I've come up with my own, and it's something that I've used for many, many years. I only gave it a name in the last couple of years, but it's called the CLEAR model. And it's all about, for me, the 5 ongoing outcomes that, you need to focus on if you're going to introduce business agility successfully in an organization. And that they stand for culture, leadership, execution, adaptability, and responsiveness. Now, I don't actually start with leadership, number 2. When I get to an organization, I try usually to sort of prove to the leadership team, who might be a bit skeptical, who have some resistance to change themselves, that, I'm going to start with some experiments, set up some hypotheses, and we're going to just try and manipulate things in the organization to improve the cultural elements of it. And I tell you what, with sort of 1 or 2 quick early wins in that space, the leadership team really does settle down and kind of goes, there's an element of trust because day one, they don't know me or a colleague from Adam, right? And as such, they've got to get that trust that we can do these things in our organizations and change the ways of working, these pervasive ways of working for something better. And so I focus on something which is culturally, possible and easy to change and makes the lives of the rest of the people in the organization better. And as soon as the leadership start hooking onto that and start seeing the quick wins, that's when I move on to leadership. And so all of the capabilities that I have to do, and I do a sort of a coaching and a training program, which I take my peers on over a number of weeks. I think, sometimes it lasts 8 weeks, sometimes it lasts 10 weeks, but I take them on this journey so that they're involved in the change program that's going on through the organization. They can openly talk about it at water coolers, in the lift, traveling up with other staff, right? How's it going? How are you adopting this? And the number of times I've sort of seen people's faces going, the CEO just talked to me about that thing, and they kind of look slightly scared. How does he or she know about this? And it's kind, well, that's because I'm bringing them on the journey at the same time. That's why they know about it as much as you as an engineering manager, for argument's sake. So it's really important. And then we're all about the execution of the business. Lots of different strategies I have, which I talk about in the book, for the actual execution of those capabilities in the business. Then it's the adaptability adaptability of how much in the business design can we actually change, and the ongoing changes that you have to remove some of the pervasive bad ways of working. And then ultimately it's the responsiveness you see that the business becomes in terms of customer success, business success, in the world of responsiveness. So it's kind of like sort of a five lane race with culture, leadership, execution, adaptability, responsiveness. There's no end to any of these 5 things, but I start with one and sort of stagger into leadership, then into execution, then into adaptability and the responsiveness that we get at the end of the day. And, you know, the approaches I use and the tactics I use for each of them are all highlighted throughout the book. So, obviously, people should go and buy it and then read it, and then they can go and find out about it. But common sense also prevails, right? And if you've had experience of better ways of working in an organization because through some level of agile or agility, now I often say to people, I'm just the manager of common sense in the business. I'm removing all the uncommon sense from the business design and just introducing, you know, as you would treat your family and deal with your husbands and wives and children and parents, for example. That's exactly what it should be like in an organization, right? And as such, common sense prevails at the end of the day.
No, I like it. And it's interesting. You talk about your framework and your model. And, you know, I think over the last 15, 20 years, I have something very similar. I call them different things.
Yep.
But yeah, it's natural. And you're removing barriers, you're increasing communication, and I really like the small wins, right? Let's do something and get some win. And that win then creates that snowball effect, right?
It does. The momentum grows.
Yeah, 100%. So we're coming to the end of this conversation, which is a bit of a shame, but what I'd like to leave the audience with is if, this is something that they have to go on because they don't have agility in their business. They've got a framework and that they can start using, but where do they start? What's the first thing? So if I walk into the office tomorrow or sit down at my desk tomorrow, what's the first thing that I need to start doing to start going on this journey? What's the first thing that you...
A great question. I mean, you could probably do a health check of your organization. You could actually just understand how healthy your organization is. If there's some form of agile or agility in your business, there are a number of maturity checks you could do to actually ultimately understand where you sort of stand in terms of, are you good at this or not? And these maturity health checks do offer a lot of sort of practical advice in terms of first, second steps. My book actually has a short story in it. I thought, as I'm writing a book, I might as well write a small novel at the end. And it's about Sarah, who actually picks up my book in that exact example that you're talking about. What do I do? And actually kind of goes chapter 1, right? These are the types of steps I need to start using if I'm actually going to start trying to bring about or exert change within the organization and influence change in the organization. These are the steps to follow. And that's the idea of the book. It's these sort of 12 chapters, these 12 steps, which allow people to go through this journey, and actually see that growth. But there are a number of organizations and institutions out there today who, as I say, have their frameworks, have their toolkits. But I would really take a cold, hard look at, is your organization actually ready for change? There's no point even trying to talk about change in your organization's DNA if it's not prepared or ready to. If you've got leaders who are openly talking about it and saying we've got to do things differently, the competition is overtaking us, we've got to try something new, different way of delivering outcomes for clients, etc., you're more likely to be on a winning track than if the leadership team says, no, we've been doing this for the last 30 years. Why do we need to change? Well, unfortunately, that's what Wilco said, didn't they? For 90 years or whatever they existed, right? They didn't embrace the cost of living crisis and the fact that a lot of other people were moving out of town. They stayed firmly entrenched on the high street. The leadership team said, no, we're not changing our processes or ways of working. And ultimately, 12,000 people had to lose their jobs from the stores around the UK, with a handful remaining open today, I think purchased through part of the liquidation process. But, it's not great. That should have been a business which should have survived another 90 years if it actually had adapted. So you've got to take that cold, hard look, first of all. Is the business ready for change? And if it is, great. There are many people out there like myself who can support people on that change process. And if it's stuck firmly where it is, then you've either got to go and look for another job somewhere to do this elsewhere, or it's a waiting game. It's just requiring patience until that moment the leadership team suddenly goes, we need to actually change.
Yeah. No, do you know what? The example I was thinking of was Blockbuster and Netflix.
There you go.
And, for me, that's the famous story. But look, I really like that. I like the health check. I think that's such a good idea. Not just on business agility, but any sort of transformation, I guess, that,
correct.
You want to through just doing that sanity check, that health check to go, is there even appetite? And then you also said kind of just seeing if there's a small part of the business that's already doing something similar.
Correct.
And seeing if you can leverage that. And I really like those two things. And I definitely think they would be two really good places to start, because it can be daunting. It can be daunting.
Start small,
Giles,
think big.
100%. Look, it's been amazing having you on the Fireside Chat. I really appreciate the time you spent. I loved the conversation. And good luck with the book launch, and catch you soon.
Sanjay, thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sanjay. Again, really interesting. We've put on the screen for those that are watching the book from Giles called Clearly Agile. So please, get a hold of the book, get a hold of Giles if you're interested in taking a much deeper dive into that fascinating topic. Now, Sanjay, by no popular demand at all, I'm going to conclude with a new limerick. I think the audience has been waiting.
Maybe I'm the only one, but I definitely.
You may well be the only one. The only one who ever tells me anyway. So here we go. This is to close off today's episode. Another very, very brief but fantastically written limerick. Here we go. An aspiring tech leader called James saw a promising career end in flames. His communication was poor, invariably first out the door, and it's always the team that he blames.
Okay, I mean, yeah, good. Maybe AI will do better next time.
AI is gradually taking over. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for watching. Come back at the next episode. This episode of Me, My CTO and I was brought to you by CTO Academy, with special thanks to Sanjay Mistry, Corey Latislaw, Casey McCurdy, Giles Lindsay, our lovely sponsors at RP Analytics, and of course you, our audience. Hasta la próxima y adiós.